In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I got myself out of $10,000 in debt to over 6 figures in net worth. And I'm going to break down the exact system that I use to track my finances, track my net worth, and also make sure that I never had to struggle with money again. If you don't know who I am, my name is Adam Taylor, and I run a done-for-you sales agency with Nomadic Closer. And we specialize in taking sales teams from $200,000 to $1 million per month, completely hands-off and hands-free to buy back the time of business owners and create phenomenal sales environments and teams in which people love being and thrive. Backstory to this, why this video is important for you if you are a high-ticket closer listening right now. The problem with so many closers, and I myself was one of them, was that we have the opportunity to make great money in sales. We have the opportunity to make $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, as far as our skill set and the offer that we sell for will take us. Now, the issue that I come across is that so many guys will make between $8,000 and $10,000 per month. Maybe they'll have a 15K month, or maybe we'll go back down to 8. But when you speak to them, they're broke. They have no savings. They have no liquid capital to use. And the issue that I see is that all they'll do is they'll get a paycheck and they'll invest it straight into the next sales training, and they'll start from zero again. And then they'll be struggling to make money. Then they'll build up a little bit and it'll all go again. And so I was the same. I lost a business through COVID, found my way into the world of sales, and it was the second time that I'd lost all my money. And so this time, when I started making money, I said, I am never putting myself in this position again. And so I educated myself. I read books, I watched YouTube videos, and I devised a whole system that I'm going to break down. I'm going to show you exactly how I did it now to make sure that I was managing my money and I was living well below my means. Why is that important? Alex Hormozi, once I heard this, I couldn't unhear it. He said that wealth is not a number, it's a ratio. If you earn $10,000 per month and you spend $1,000 each and every month, if you were to not earn any money, you have just bought yourself 9 months of living. If you earn $10,000 per month, but you spend 9, you are living paycheck to paycheck. You are broke. The same goes for $100,000, $1 million a month. Wealth is a ratio. And I'm going to break down for you exactly how I managed to make myself wealthy whilst getting myself out of debt. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the overall structure on my iPad, and then I'm going to show you my exact spreadsheets and Google Sheets that I used to keep track of all this. The system that I used was called a bucket system. And so essentially what I would do is I would have different bank accounts for different things. The first bank account I would have would be my main bank account where all of my income would go into. Then I had a bank account for all of my fixed costs. We're going to call them fixed costs. I was about to call them outgoings. I had a bank account for all of my fixed costs. Then I had a separate account for all of my variable costs. Then I opened an account. I have no affiliation to the platform. I'm just letting you know what I used. eToro for investments. The way that I used this was then in my variable cost bank account, I had so-called subspaces. And in these subspaces, I would have different amounts of money go into different subspaces. The ones that I had, for example, were something called irregular shock. This was key. The issue with so many of us is that we save up a little bit of money and then all of a sudden something out of the blue happens and we have to fork out a lump of money for it. How many times have you had your car break down, a tax bill come up, an insurance that you need to pay off, something that you hadn't previously foreseen that suddenly put a big dent in your expendable income? You need to prepare for the unprepared. The second one that I would have would be education and mentorship. And so I would have a subspace that I would save up money for purely to invest back into courses, trainers, mentors, coaching, whatever it might be. I would then have what we can call a bucket list. I actually use this as travel expenses. So as a nomad, every time that I moved country, I would have to pay for flights. And when I got there, I would buy myself a guitar. I play the guitar, but I don't like to travel with it. It's just a pain in the to the airport. And so I buy myself a guitar when I'm there, and I'll just give it away to someone before I leave. It's just a little ritual that I have. I would buy a yoga mat, yoga blocks, because they were just cumbersome to fit in my luggage, in my backpack. And so I'd just buy new ones wherever I was. Little things like this, travel expense. Then I would have investments. This would essentially go into this account here. So that would be investments. And then what I would have would be a subspace for my expenses, food, drink, going out, an activity on the weekend, just your regular everyday expenses. And what I would do with this is I would divide this number by 4 And every Sunday, I would give myself my weekly allowance and put it back into here. Okay. And so this way, the only money that could actually go off of my card was my weekly budget. Budget for my expenses for the month was I would divide it by 4, and every week I would give myself a weekly budget. If we were going out for dinner and I only had $50 left, well, that's all I had. And I just had to deal with it. And I did this until I was disciplined enough to live well beneath my means. The way that I did this was I would play with the percentages of each of these so-called buckets. So my fixed costs were my fixed costs. That was just a fixed amount of money that had to go out every month for rent, for insurance, for Netflix, for gym, whatever. Now, in terms of the variable costs, I would break these down into different percentages. So these were the percentages that I used back in 2022. I would play around with these percentages as my income grew, but I would put 20% into irregular shock. And what I would do is my goal was to have 6 months of living expenses saved up so that I could then bring that back down to 0. And then I could distribute this percentage back into each of these different buckets. 20% will go into irregular shock. Education and mentorship, I would put 10%. Reason being, this was my first priority at the time. Because I didn't have any savings saved up for if I stopped selling, I couldn't find an offer, I wanted to take time off. This was my first priority. And so I put 20% into irregular shock, 10% into education and mentorship. Then my travel expenses, I would put 10% into. My goal with all of this was to live on 20% of my expenses so that I could then be investing the other 40%. Now, if your income is low, what you can do, of course, is you can just swap these and say, I need to be living on 40% of my expenses. And that means I can only put 20% into my investments. That's completely fine. The goal is to continuously be reducing this number and increasing this number. The reason being, this is the only one that grows itself. Now, we could argue that this one grows itself. Yes, 100%. But the problem that a lot of you guys watching this have is that you are, excuse my French, you are course whores. You will jump on the next training program, the next one, the next one, the next one, and you don't allow yourself time to really commit to that one program to get a positive ROI on it. And there are very few sales trainers out there that do this. And I'm going to shout out Bill Walsh as being the only one that actually guarantees results and can and will guarantee double, triple your income. I have no affiliation to Bill anymore. We used to work together. I just want to shout him out because he's one of the very few that if you actually want an ROI on whatever you put into your sales training, put it into him. I stand nothing to gain by doing that, by saying that. So far, so clear. Money comes in into one account. From that account, all of my fixed costs go out. I then transfer money to my variable account. I use Wise. You can use whatever you want. In Wise, I would have different jars. So into the different jars, I would label them, I would calculate it and put 20% into irregular shock, 10% I would save up for education and mentorship, 10% for travel expenses. My goal would be to live on 20% of my variable income to be able to invest 40% into eToro. Again, Alex Hormozi's advice, once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. He said, if Charlie Munger said, just put as much of your income as you can into the S&P 500, then that must be good advice. He's the best investor of all time. The reason why I started actually doing this was that he said, it's so simple, you probably won't do it. Let's break it down. I'm going to show you now the exact spreadsheets that I used back in 2022 to manage all of this. So all I did is I just added up all of my different outgoings. And the reason that this is important is because when you are in financial difficulty, the thing that tends to happen is that you avoid. You stop looking at your bank account. You don't want to open your bank accounting app because you don't want to see the number in there, and you avoid and you have no control over the situation. And this was probably the hardest thing for me in the beginning, was actually just facing it. Just opening the app and looking at what goes out of my account and when. And so this here is the date. And that way I could never be surprised. And then something doesn't go through. I get a fine. I get chased. I have to then, pay the fine manually. It takes time out of my day, effort, bandwidth, etc. So a lot of this is in German because at the time I was living in Germany. So, this is just my insurance. This was a training program I was doing. Spotify. This is my health insurance, my phone, the gym, Netflix. These used to be loan repayments. So these were loan repayments, outstanding credit card bills, internet, electricity. So everything that would go out, I would add it up. I did this for different bank accounts that I had, just so I could know exactly what was going out. I had things that used to go out over PayPal. And then I had quarterly car insurance. This is back when I had a car still. And these are different yearly Amazon Prime, yearly Visa charge. So I got hit with a 30 euro Visa charge just for having the card that I wasn't expecting. And it bounced this one time. So I was like, okay, I'm not letting that happen again. So I figured out this was for my tax people, some different insurance. So all I did was I looked at what goes out on a monthly basis, quarterly, and yearly. And so these two, obviously, on a quarterly basis, add up to 771 euros. So I just divided that monthly. Okay, so I knew that these don't go out monthly, but I need to be saving 64 euros every month to make sure that I have enough to cover these expenses. Same for these go out on a yearly basis. That was a total of 466 euros. That means that 39 euros needs to get set aside every single month for this. Meaning my fixed costs came to a grand total of this, and this, a grand total of 4,864 euros. So this was step one, was just understanding what the fuck goes out of my account on a monthly, quarterly, and yearly basis. Now, once I knew that, the first goal was to start reducing those. What can I cut? What can I slash? This is when I sold my car. I got rid of some insurances that I didn't need. I stopped going to the gym. I just worked out outside, all these different things. And I gamified the hell out of this. Was how low can I bring my fixed costs? Then from there, what I would do, this is when I started back in January 2022, was net earnings. This was one of my early paychecks in the sales space, 6,500 euros that month. Fixed cost at the time. So I'd reduced my fixed costs to 1,500 euros a month at this point. Got it down that far. That means that 5,064 euros and 8 cents were left over. So I knew that 20% of 5,064 euros was 1,012 euros, 82 cents. That goes into the regular shop bucket. 500 euros went into the education mentorship bucket. That's the travel fund. That will go to my eToro account. And this was my variable expenses. Yes, I lived off of 1,000 euros a month. That's 250 euros each and every week. Why? I'll show you in a second. My goal, as I mentioned here, was to, once I'd saved 12,000 euros, so 6 months of living expenses, to bring this down to 0%, to then increase this, to then decrease this. You can play around with the percentages. I did this on a monthly basis for as long as I needed to get out of the shit. All right. So the last thing that I did was to gamify all of this. I started tracking my net worth. Why? Firstly, because of the avoidance that I mentioned before. Every single morning before I got out of bed, this is probably not the right thing to do dopamine wise and all this kind of stuff. And I know everybody's got their morning routines, but this was the most important thing in my life, was to get myself out of this horrendous debt and gain financial freedom. I would open my phone, I would open my laptop, and I would track my net worth, meaning I would open up each and every account, every bank account that I had, every single thing that I owned and owed, and I would drop those numbers into a sheet so that I knew my net worth. And so this is what it looked like. I did this every day until I didn't need to anymore. This is September 2021. So these are the different accounts that I had. I had a little Elrond there. These are different bank accounts that I had. This was a loan that I still owed from my CrossFit gyms, and my net worth was at its lowest here, minus 6,759 euros and 93 cents. Good times. Good times. This is making me pretty nostalgic, I'm not gonna lie. And if you can see here, I went from 7th of October 2021, I went from minus 6,759 euros of net worth to my first 10,000 at the end of December that same year. And I did that every month, and I wasn't as disciplined as I could have been. As you can see, once things started getting good, I slacked off. My net worth started to decrease, and so I started up again, and I started putting in here how much I'd spent on a daily basis. And I put a little formula in here. I remember now. I put a formula in here that if I spent more than, I think it was, I can't remember what I put in, maybe 30 euros or it looks like it was 50. I think it was 50. If I spent more than 50 euros in a day, just in a single day, it would go red. And at the end of the day, before I went to bed, I would go through my accounts and I would count how much I'd spent that day. And so as you can see, I had to slowly start climbing back out of the shit. until fast forward April 2023 was the last time that I actually did this in this sheet, where my total net worth was at 76,440 euros. And yeah, I knew that in May 2023, I hit the 6 figures in net worth, and I haven't been back down since. That's just made me a little bit emotional and nostalgic, because I'd lost everything and I'd found this thing, sales, that looked like it was going to get me back out of the shit. I poured my heart and soul into it. I obsessed about it. I did nothing else. I was trying to hypnotize myself to get better at sales. I would listen to sales recordings, trainings. As I fell asleep, I would listen to them on the bike on the way to the gym. I would listen to them in the gym. I would listen to Alex Hormozi's Gym Launch Secrets audiobooks, and I would just put it in my headphones. If I was doing anything outside of talking to someone, I had it in my ears constantly. Even if I wasn't listening to it, I was trying to brainwash myself to acquire the skill that's now given me the opportunity to help a lot of other reps by coaching over 150 reps at this point, by building sales teams to over $1 million a month, to creating phenomenal sales environments that people enjoy being with, thriving, and all that from very, very humble beginnings. So I don't know where you are in your journey. It doesn't really matter where you are in your journey. This is something that will give you the structure and the discipline, the thing that nobody taught us how to do this. And my hope is that it helps at least one person so they don't have to go through what I went through. So if you like this video, like it. If you want to see more of this content, subscribe. And if you don't, I love you anyway. Till next time.